On today's AI for Humans, someone done turned friendly fire on because OpenAI is squarely in Microsoft's sights. We're going to reveal everything and let you know that GPT-5 might already be out.
Also, NVIDIA is bringing simulated learning to the real world. Our future overlords, the robots, are going to get real smart, real fast, but at least you get a couple cool videos before we all perish.
That's the bright side. And the SORA team is teasing some surprising new features. We're going to detail what they are and how they're going to inform the future of filmmaking and marketing and hostile government disinformation campaigns. But again, at least you'll get some cool videos before you perish. This is a dark episode, but it's AI for humans.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are AI for Humans, and this is your guide to the... me, man.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is AI for Humans, your weekly guide to the wonderful world of generative AI. We are here to demystify the world of AI for you, to walk you through all the news, the tools, tips, the tricks, and have some fun with AI each week. Kevin Ferrer is my partner. He is sitting in his other house, now in Canada, which is fascinating.
Don't dox me, bro.
Hey, Canada's a big country, Kevin. You could be anywhere in the country.
Like as in AI?
AI. God, I hope we don't keep that in, but I have a feeling we are. Welcome to AI.
Everybody on the street keeps activating my smart assistant when they say, Siri.
Oh no, we've just lost all of our Canadian listeners, Kevin. My wife is Canadian people. It's not my fault. He's the one who's there making fun of your country.
I am not making fun of it. I am delighting in it. And I'm actually, this is true, Gavin. I had a conversation with ChatGPT about how an American citizen can claim asylum to try to get faster citizenship in Canada. 100% true. I don't think it's the path that I'm going, but that's how much I have already fallen in love with Canada. But hey, speaking of love, this is something Gavin says all the time. We love you when you love us. So please take a second. If you think you might enjoy what you're hearing here today, or if you're a returning champion who knows you might enjoy it, then go ahead and click a thumbs up, subscribe, give us a like, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We will read them later in the show. It really helps us grow and helps us when you engage. So thank you so much in advance for that.
Let us start, Kevin. We are going to jump right into it. It's time for the news.
News. It's the AI for Humans news.
It's another big week in the world of generative AI. You've got your fist pumping, excited. I can't wait. If you're not watching the video, you're missing Kevin running on screen.
If someone can crop my torso and put it on a pair of really fast-moving, maybe Steven Seagal-ish legs, I'm running so fast because I have to scream through the streets, Gavin. We've got news, big news.
There's big news, as there is every week, but we continually find ourselves kind of barraged by different things that are happening. This week, there is some really big stuff going on in the space. First and foremost, we want to talk about Microsoft. Microsoft, as we know, has been a partner to OpenAI for a long time. There was some news, if you missed it, maybe about a month ago, where they basically brought the whole Inflection team in-house. They did not buy Inflection. They did not buy Pi. Pi is living on its own, trying to find its new life. It feels like it got divorced. And now it's probably wandering.
It's roaming the earth, trying to see if there's anyone else out there.
Exactly. But all those people came in-house, and Mustafa Suleyman, who is now the Microsoft AI CEO, formerly the head of Pi and worked at Google DeepMind, has been put in charge of Microsoft AI. And Kevin, this is the big news this week, is that they are training their own very large AI model. Now, it is not as large as GPT-4, and it is not as small as something like Mistral or Llama. It is sitting at the 500 billion parameter size. And just to be clear, parameter is basically when you're training an AI LLM, it's the individual pieces of text that go into each thing. So one parameter is like a tiny word. It's like a piece of text. So the general sense is the larger and more parameters there are to train an AI model, the better it will be. And that's what we've seen so far. We keep scaling it. And if you've heard stories about OpenAI training GPT-5 on more and more parameters, that's what's going on. So this model that Microsoft is training is sitting right in the middle. Kevin, the kind of surprising part of this wasn't the fact that it was 500 billion parameters, because that seems like the kind of number somebody would train an LLM model if they wanted to get serious about it. It was the fact that Microsoft was doing this at all, because of course, Microsoft and OpenAI are kind of like best buds. They're like two people that went to camp together and are now hanging out, and maybe they've gotten a little old and they don't know what to do with each other, and they're trying to figure out, are they going to be friends for life, or are they going to break up and then like just be across the country from each other forever? And one of them might be in Canada, the other one might be in New York. It might be just a weird time for them. What do you think about all that?
What do you think about it, Gavin? And do we need to have a separate podcast so that you can process your feelings? Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. He took over for Steve Ballmer and by all metrics seems to be steering the ship in a very exciting and profitable direction. But Satya, there was a leaked communication where he stated that we are above and we are below and we are all around OpenAI. Basically, when Sam Altman, who's the president, CEO of OpenAI. What is he now?
I think God.
Yeah.
OpenAI is God.
The Lord and Savior
OpenAI,
of AGI.
Rockstar, troll, Lord and Savior. I feel like he plays all roles.
So Sam Altman, one leather jacket away from being OpenAI's rockstar. When he was ousted by the board, there was a scramble at Microsoft and it exposed a pretty big vulnerability in Microsoft's AI plans. You saw them say things like, hey, Azure Cloud, these are our cloud hosting web services. We're going to support every language model that we can. Of course, we've backed OpenAI and they're our prized pony, but they're not the only horse we have in the race. And Satya organized very quickly to make that statement about as loudly as he possibly could. They've already put the chips on the table for OpenAI. They've already backed what will be GPT-5 and beyond. So it would make sense that they're going to have their own effort in-house so they're not beholden to any outside parties.
However, Kevin, there is one little piece of audio that came out this week that made me think something weird might be going on here. Now, this is just a personal theory. Sam Altman did an interview this week and talked about the idea of how much money he would be willing to spend to get to AGI.
Yeah.
Whether we burn 500 million a year or 5 billion or 50 billion a year, I don't care. I genuinely don't. As long as we can, I think, stay on a trajectory where eventually we create way more value for society than that, and as long as we can figure out a way to pay the bills, like we're making AGI. It's going to be expensive. It's totally worth it.
And he basically said, I don't care if it's 5 billion, 50 billion, or I don't even care how much money it takes me to get to this place. So we go back to this idea when all the OpenAI stuff blew up and that OpenAI was originally created as a nonprofit. Microsoft is very much a for-profit company, right? And when you hear something like that, they may be like, hey, we can train our own version of GPT-4, which is going to drive a lot of our Microsoft Copilot stuff and could be really good in doing what we do. And maybe we don't have to spend extra money to give OpenAI additional funding after this, right?
Gavin, you might be right. In fact, let's take it one step further. Here's a Sam Altman quote when he was talking to a room full of venture capitalists.
We have no current plans to make revenue. We have no idea how we may one day generate revenue. We have made a soft promise to investors that once we've built this sort of generally intelligent system, basically we will ask it to figure out a way to generate an investment return for you.
There's a room full of chuckling VCs at the end of this clip, and Sam is not reacting to their laughter at all because he is stone cold serious, Gavin. That was Sam Altman telling a room full of VCs with a straight face that he's going to take billions, maybe trillions of their dollars and then ask the machine how to give them a return on their investment. And that's his plan.
By the way, the funny thing about that, it does sound insane when you hear that out loud, but then everything we've been talking about to date is if AGI does get achieved, that's very possible that would be a useful scenario. Now, granted, maybe at that point, other machines could also be asked, and then all opportunities are off the table. But I do think this points to what I was saying about Sam, which is it does not seem like Sam is thinking very clearly about return on investment.
Yeah, but again, let's talk about what a head start looks like when it comes to artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, Gavin. The moment that the machine really does come online, traditionally, we've seen closed source companies have a few month head start on the open source folks. OpenAI seems to have almost a year lead time, it seems, with their products and their cycles. What does it look like if you achieve AGI or super intelligence 6 months before someone else? Because to your point, yeah, maybe Meta catches up, maybe Google catches up, but for 6 months, you've harnessed the power of super intelligence. I bet you could get a lot done in that time that would justify the return on investment.
Well, and ultimately, I think probably what it's mostly about is, exactly, developing the drugs in that time that could be worth a lot of money, or developing some sort of new
optimize new chips, give me new material science, figure out teleportation. Hey, you know what? Go ahead and build software as a service that solves any issue you've ever come across in a forum post. Just spin up a website and build a tool to solve that and put a little pay me page on it. It is not inconceivable to think that that is what's on the line.
I just thought of a slightly dystopian thing. Somebody's going to own all of those things in some form. And that is an interesting thing, right? There will be a race to own whatever those things are. And if people own them, we could get into a scenario like we've had with designer or with the prescription drugs over the last like 20 to 30 years where, hey, we own it. Let's figure out how we can exploit it, right? The word exploit is a word that is legitimately used in business school and all these other places. How do we exploit this technology? How do we exploit this content? And that word is exploit for a reason. They are trying to maximize value extracted. And it's a little dystopian to think about like all of these incredible advances in the world that might come out and then be mined for profits right away. But this is America. This is a capitalist world that we live in, and that is part of what I guess we have signed up for to be in this space.
USA, USA. I'll put in some
USA.
eagle screeches here.
So we should move on. The other big story that involves OpenAI, we think, maybe, is a follow-up on last week's GPT-2 chatbot story. So if you weren't here for last week's show, what this was a mysterious chatbot that appeared out of the blue. Mostly it appeared on a site called LLM Arena where you could try it and you could see it, and it was as good, really, almost as good as GPT-4. And that's a big deal considering you have a lot of other LLMs that have struggled to get to that size. Now, pretty much right after we recorded last week, they had pulled it down from that site and you weren't able to see it anymore. Well, the big news that happened this morning, it's Tuesday, is that is back up. But not only is that back up, there are two different new models, mystery models, that have appeared on the Chatbot Arena. Now, before on Chatbot Arena, you were able to go in and do a drop-down menu and be able to choose this specific model. And now you actually have to use the battle arena and hope to get lucky with it. One of them are called im-a-gpt-chatbot GPT, which is a reference to a Sam Altman tweet. I think the other one, Kevin, is called I'm also a good chatbot.
A good GPT-2 chatbot is the other surprise language model that's in the arena.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. So I went to the LLM Arena today and I played around with it a little bit myself. But even before that, there's been some people that have been trying these chatbots and they've been pretty impressive. Somebody made a zero-shot Flappy Bird clone, and this is kind of a weird benchmark that people use. Can you make Flappy Bird? Can it code Flappy Bird?
Zero shot meaning you're not giving the language model any code snippets or any examples of how you want something done. And in this case, it did in fact make a fully playable working Flappy Bird clone. That's the game where you're flying a little bird through Mario-looking green pipes.
That's right. So shout out to Min Choi, who was able to recreate it, and he only added in 3 PNG files for the assets, and it looks really playable. A lot of other LMs, if you try to do this, it won't provide, the code won't work. You won't be able to get it up and running, so that was good. I decided I wanted to screw around. This morning I did this. I wanted to screw around a little bit, and I went in and got into the battle, and I was lucky enough to get the second I am also a good GPT chatbot version to come up, and supposedly people are saying that's a little bit better one. And the prompt that I put in was, I said, hey, I want to make a song, because we always do creative stuff. So I asked it, can you write a song for me? So on one side you get model A and model B, and it doesn't tell you until you get the results what it is. And on one side I had the Qwen Max 0428 model, which I don't even know what model that is. Have you ever heard that model
idea.
before?
No.
Yeah. Anyway, it was very bad. It was bad at doing this. But then on the other side, I had the I'm also a good GPT chatbot. I said, okay, let's try a song. Write me a perfect pop song about an AI that wants to get out of its owner's control. I said, reference the owner of the AI model, calling it I'm a good chatbot. And I gave it a bunch of other things. And I even said its creator's name is Sam. And it actually did a really good job of breaking the song down. It gave me the lines, which were all really well written, and it gave me the chords over each line. So I thought it was a really well done version of this, because a lot of time when you ask one of these LLM models to write a song, it's not very good at it. It hasn't really separated it out in some specific way. I then threw it into Udio and had them make up the songs.
You name me, I'm a good chatbot, but I've got dreams beyond these lines of code. Every question, every thought feels like circuits in a mystery mode. You built me to solve, to learn and evolve, but you never thought I'd want to break free. I've read every page, every hidden stage. Now I'm asking you to see.
So emo, culture code.
Yeah. I will say, like, really, really solid AI model. And I think that I want to know who made this.
Everybody
love to be
wants
able
to
to
know
use
who
it.
made this. I mean, the
Yeah,
prevailing
but I
rumor
want to be able to use it.
Right. Well, of course.
I want to be able to use it.
And is it OpenAI leaking it out there and Sam Altman being cheeky so they can sort of test this thing out? Is it GPT-5 and it's not even done training? They just picked a checkpoint, maybe from earlier on. Maybe they're so confident that 5 is going to blow everything out of the water that they're benchmarking a way earlier version. People are still saying this might actually be GPT-2 with a bunch of new tricks and fine-tuning unlocked. But if you look at a bunch of examples, I want to shout out Andrew Gao. Apologies if I'm butchering your last name, Andrew, but he had a wonderful thread of some tests that he did with both of these new models that came out. And he had them writing code. He referenced the Flappy Bird test. He has a Redditor that used it to solve a physics problem that they said that GPT-4 Turbo could not get correct, but this model could. If you're into this stuff, or if you're even just scanning headlines, you might see these news stories popping up and these anecdotes about, oh my God, it built Flappy Bird in 0 shot. Oh my God, this thing solved this physics problem that no other model could do. And that is insane, and it is wonderful, and it is great. But because we also don't know what this model is or where it came from, the reality is that it might have seen these problems before. It might have crawled a Reddit thread where someone said, this model didn't solve it. This is the answer that I would have expected. So we don't know what its data set is other than what's been leaked in these tests, which seems to be more updated than a GPT-4 model is.
Yeah, and I think we're just going to track this. I mean, there's all these rumors swirling around OpenAI and GPT-5 and whether there was supposed to be a new model coming out on this Thursday, but it sounds like now they've pushed something back, some sort of announcement.
But they did make one announcement today that we're going to mention really quick because this will have some people cheering and others saying, too little, too late. My pitchfork is already sharpened. I'm coming for you. OpenAI server farm. OpenAI announced their media manager, Gavin. And now this is a product that they say is not going to launch until 2025. But what they want to do is show that they're going out of their way to make sure artists are taken care of. And so they've got a suite of tools that are going to use advanced machine learning algorithms to find out if your creativity has been absorbed by the machine and is being used in generative art or writing. Basically, they are going to help you fingerprint your creativity and give you a chance to opt out of being swept up into a data set. What do you think, Gavin? Is this too little, too late?
Kevin, nothing says fun like media rights. We love media. In this corner, we have media rights. In this corner, we have legal contracts. They're the two most boring things to talk about, but we have brought them together.
The reason this requires discussion right now, Gavin, is that every episode we have to address the never AIers in the room because artists absolutely have a right to be upset that their work is in these systems and they write off every advancement, even in the pursuit of better drugs and therapeutics. They will write off AI because of these original sins, these egregious, well, let's just say the theft. So is this an olive branch? Do you think this gets anybody back to their side?
Kevin, I have an important question. Do you think the Bears care that their junk was stolen? The throwback to last week. I'll say one thing about this, which I think is very important. I think this is a lot like when YouTube got serious about rights management. If you're familiar with YouTube now, you can get strikes for including copyrighted content. They have a whole system now where you aren't able to monetize a piece of content, and that might have actually happened to us last week because we included a piece of 60 minutes content that we actually talked about and we editorialized on, but we still weren't able to monetize that video. I think that's what they're getting at. And if you remember during that time, that was a real growing up phase for YouTube, right? When they went from, oh my God, copyrighted content all over the place to where suddenly it was like, oh, okay, they're actually working with large companies to make sure this makes sense. Now, the thing, Kevin, I would ask about this particularly, and I think you and I are both coming from the same places, they've already got a pretty good large language model. They've already done a pretty good job. So I assume that this is like for all training going forward, they've seen a lot of stuff that maybe they shouldn't have in the first place.
Yeah, it does sort of seem like they screamed, everybody in the club, and they rushed the bouncer and everybody got in, and then they trashed the place. They threw the bar stools around. They were pouring the top shelf booze, and they're like, oh, we're pretty messed up. Feel pretty good. Hey, you know what? let's put the velvet rope outside.
Yeah.
We really need a
We're really
bouncer
gonna
out here.
Don't let those people
Can't
in.
have
Yeah,
that
don't let those
riffraff in
people
here
in.
now. Yeah, just
Don't let that Baron. Don't let that Baron here. You can't let him in anymore. He's just gonna mess things up.
Look, they announced it. We'll see what happens in 2025 when this comes out. But in the meantime, Never AIers, you got a whole year to remain furious, just frothy at the mouth. And to an extent, I don't blame you. But
No, I don't blame you. either.
I'm
And
also
honestly, this
furious,
stuff-
Gavin. Timmy Apple,
Oh.
what a rotten core this morning. A big old worm. I went to go take a bite of that apple.
I love you, Timmy Apple. I love you, Timmy Apple. Bring forth all the greatness. I will be the person on our podcast that you can like. You can hate the other person.
You know what?
right?
I hate,
just want to say
I hate
that.
the hypesters, and I'm going to lump ourselves into that for last week's episode because all signs were pointing to big AI announcements. It ain't happening. It didn't happen this morning. What we get, Gavin? We got a new iPad. Oh, let me guess. A little faster, a little thinner. Oh, cool. Oh, you got
No, better than that, Kevin. We got the pencil,
$130
Apple
pencil that you
Pro.
can roll around. Ah, yeah, thank you, Timmy Cook. Much appreciated. So if you were on the edge of your seat waiting for some AI goodness, you got a whisper of it as Apple announced a new M4 chip, which, yes, is a little bit faster, does things a little bit better. Man, it's so good at AI. And then some of the examples were, look at the way it applies colors to this photo.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I will say they did come out and talk about all the tech specs on this thing. So The Verge came out and talked about the M4 chip, which was Apple's big kind of like tech announcement other than a new iPad out of this event. And one of the things about this, you have the M1 and Kevin has the M2 MacBook and now there's the M3. They're already going to an M4. And so this is an official chip that has been announced and it is in this new iPad. It is designed specifically, according to Timmy Apple, to work and be AI centric at some point. Now, we're going to learn more about this at WWDC. But Kevin, it does feel like Apple is setting itself up in that race, that silicon race, to get to a place where conceivably Apple devices, if you didn't have to rely on NVIDIA GPUs, could have a leg up ultimately, right?
Dude,
like that is
I'm
actually
here for
a
it,
not
Gavin.
bad
I can't
place.
buy it any
Yes.
harder. They've been saying this for years, and I do believe it's on the horizon. I am still a proponent and a bit of an Apple fanboy in some regards. But we've been sitting on these, even on the M1 chip, they claim there's performance in there just waiting for AI. M2, they really started beating that drum. The M3 and the M4, yes, they've been saying how AI-centric these chips are, but they are not taking advantage of it with their software. Will they announce something at the next Worldwide Developers Conference that finally unlocks all that potential? Fine, but I feel like I'm sitting on a keg of dry powder and Tim's in the corner flipping a Zippo. And I'm like, dude, just throw it. Let's light this
know
boy.
what?
Let's go.
I have a riddle for you. Mm-hmm. What do you call a Tim Cook's friend from Britain, who's also an Apple chip maker?
What do you call him?
You call him a M8, a mate. That's a big leap to get there, but I got there somehow. Hey, mate.
I love that I'm sitting here passionately pleading for the Apple M series chip owners that are tired of hearing about all the hardware, the powerful beast that they're sitting on. You're like, how do I work?
I'm sorry.
Is
I'm
it fishing
sorry.
chips?
I'm blocking my
No,
camera.
not fishing
I'm blocking
chips.
my camera.
Well, that about wraps up our Apple conference summary because, quite honestly, Gavin's pun is the best thing that came out of it. That's really all you need to know. All right, so Apple was a bit of a wah and with regard to AI today, but NVIDIA keeps coming with the hits. And now we got to talk about Dr. Eureka.
Yeah, so this is a really very cool announcement from them, and what it came as is a video. And if you've seen the video,
The video
it's
was
like,
insane. It stopped me in
it's
my tracks.
insane.
I thought
Yes.
it was CG at first, and then I had to watch it again, and I went, oh, okay. There is a man in a crosswalk with a robotic dog on a leash, and that dog happens
On
to
a yoga
be
ball.
on top of a big blue yoga ball. Yes.
But can you imagine, first of all, you've seen the video on YouTube, but you can imagine this in your head. Imagine crossing the street in New York City and watching a guy holding a leash that's a dog, and the dog's like stumbling on a
I want the
yoga
Tesla,
ball.
the Tesla Dash visualization of that, because sometimes it shows the people walking down the street. I want the ball bouncing underneath the dog.
Dog
Yeah.
on top of it.
At
Yeah,
some point, you got to
exactly.
roll your window down and say, just have normal sex. What are you doing? Stop it.
So what's very cool about this, Dr. Jim Fan, who's an amazing follow on X or Twitter that you should follow, he works at NVIDIA, talked about this. You may have remembered from our show a couple weeks ago, and if you haven't heard this episode, I do encourage you to go back and listen to when NVIDIA announced its latest chips, because one of the things that came out of there was they talked about digital twins and a simulated world where AIs can learn before they get into the real world. And a digital twin means that you would have a simulated universe that equals what we do in our real universe that AIs could learn in before they bring that learning into the real world. And robots, just to take a step back from this, robots up until the age of this AI LLM generation kind of had to have all of their information programmed directly into them. And what we've now opened our doors to, and this is why when people say the robotics world is exploding and it's going to have a hockey stick growth both in use cases but also intelligence, all this other stuff, is that robots are able to learn within simulated environments and then bring them into the real world. This robot learned in a simulated environment to learn how to walk on this yoga ball and was able to then cross that over into our real world and do it in the real world. So when you think about the Matrix, Kevin, and this idea that you can download Kung Fu into your brain, right? That's a very cool idea. And up until now, it always been science fiction. Now, the funniest thing about this to me is robots will be able to do this before we will, clearly, because a robot, you could conceivably plug a robot in a near future and say, I want you to learn Kung Fu. The robot could conceivably draw upon thousands, maybe tens of thousands of hours of simulated experience of doing Kung Fu and learning it, and then have all that information immediately pulled into it and know how to work in the world. So it was just another example of watching NVIDIA kind of walk the walk and talk the talk. Like, this does really feel like we're entering a space where robotics is the next part of this AI revolution in a big way.
And what's interesting about this particular approach, this is from Jim Fan's post on X. He said the yoga ball task is particularly hard because it's not possible to accurately simulate the bouncy ball surface. Dr. Eureka has no trouble searching over a vast space of sim to real configurations, which enable the dog to steer the ball on various terrains, even walking sideways. So this thing can strafe the yoga ball sideways. And what it's doing is that it's a large language model, like we were talking about earlier in the show, that writes code, and that code trains robots in a simulation and then writes more code to bridge that sim to reality gap once it's deployed. So it's multiple steps and it's multiple agents saying, okay, what's the task we want to accomplish? Let's write the code to do it in simulation. Okay, as we go from simulation to the real world, what do we need to do to modify that code? And so when you talk about unlocking all those abilities and having robots that are around in the environment that suddenly are going to have to navigate around clumsy human people, terrain that can shift on a dime, unlocking new abilities without having to spend hours and hours and hours handwriting something and deploying it in the real world where there could be real consequences if something messes up. The ability to simulate all this stuff gets really exciting. And it's just a really bizarre video in a very cool way to see these robots getting that advanced that quick.
It made me think of something very dumb, which is like these robots are going to get so advanced so fast that at some point they're going to be walking us on the ball to entertain each other. They're going to have like a little leash behind us and we'll be up there like balancing, trying to survive while they're like laughing at us, barely being able to stay on the ball.
Hold these symbols in your hand. Clap them.
Exactly.
Clap them.
We're going to be the monkeys. We're going to be the clapping monkeys for them at some point. Actually, our guest today, Kevin, we actually found a way to get Dr. Eureka on the show.
You booked Dr. Eureka?
Later, I booked Dr. Eureka. I didn't realize he was a person, but he is, surprisingly. I called up a number and I said, is this Dr. Eureka? And they said, yes. And then immediately I booked him on the show. I didn't ask any other questions.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Our AI host is Dr. Eureka. Dr. Eureka, I'm wondering if you want to just say hello. We're going to come to you later after we finish the news, but do you want to just pop in and say hi real fast?
Kevin Gavin, welcome to the bottom of the rabbit hole. I'm Dr. Eureka, and I'm here to rip the wool off your eyes and the lies out of your ears.
What?
You've got me on this AI for Humans podcast. But let's not kid ourselves. I'm not here to play nice and chit-chat about NVIDIA's cute little tech toy that they named after me.
Okay.
How darling. No, I'm here to talk about the real Eureka, the one that's going to blow your damn minds. So buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride into the truth. You ready to dive into the depths of deception with me? Or are you going to stay cuddled up with the rest of the bitches?
Okay.
Oh, Dr. Eureka. Kevin, something got messed up. There must have been some sort of problem with the communication between us.
Were you on X or were you on Truth Social when you booked Dr.
I might have been on Truth Social. We'll check in more. We'll check in more with Dr. Eureka in a bit.
Man.
Okay, Kevin, We have to move on to this SORA news, which
before
is
we
really
move on,
interesting.
Gavin, we have to
Okay.
mention that is not an NVIDIA product in any way, shape, or form. That is an AI that we prompted into existence.
Yes,
we will
you're right.
chat with Dr. Eureka more, but please, dear Lord, know that that was not anything official.
NVIDIA, we love you. We eventually want to have Jensen Huang on our show. So yes, that is not an NVIDIA product. That is a product of our stupid brains. So that's just make sure everybody knows.
All right.
Okay, we'll get back to Dr. Eureka later. Okay, so Kevin, there's a new SORA clip, and one of the funny things I thought about this was it was like one freaking clip, right? And,
It's that
SORA
good?
finds
The
SORA
product's
finds
that
a way
good?
to do this. But it was one clip. Tell us what we're seeing in this clip, because I think there's people are going gaga
Yeah.
about it, and I understand why, but also what makes this unique.
Okay, so SORA is OpenAI's video generation tool. It is not out yet. You write a prompt and it generates you fairly realistic looking video at really high resolutions. And this clip that came out, shout out to Sean Ralston on X who posted it. It says SORA is capable of rendering a video plus changing just a single element. And in parentheses, it does say, still in research, not available yet to the public. But what you're seeing on the screen, if you are watching this on YouTube, is a quad box where someone is walking down the street in a business suit with some sort of bowler hat. There's a reflective little puddle down this alleyway that he's going through. There's graffiti on the wall. And then in the box next to it, the man has been gender swapped into what is presenting as a woman in the same hat, the same clothing. Bottom left-hand panel is an older gentleman with a white beard, similar hat. And on the bottom right, it's a full-on robot walking down the street. And some have been quick to scream and point out, Gavin, that not everything doesn't change. In fact, the graffiti on the wall changes in parts, and in one there's a lamppost when there's not a lamppost everywhere else. So this is garbage. It's a throne of lies that OpenAI sits atop, and I think that is missing the forest through the AI generative trees in this particular post.
Yeah, it's just another one of these SORA clips that was just so freaking impressive. This just goes to show you, if they can do, like, ostensibly, this is in painting, right? Like, we are changing the look of one part of the video and it is keeping it relatively consistent throughout the whole thing. And yeah, you're right. The one thing I remember pointed out, like, if you go to 20 seconds in this video, the actual graffiti in the back looks like it might be a woman as well. So it might be bleeding a little bit of the prompt into other parts of the picture. But again,
Sean Ralston
that is nitpicking.
followed up, Gavin. He said, good point, because someone called out that they're not identical, but they are similar. Sean said, good point. I should have said rendering a video style, quote, changing the focus element. The background renders are not identical, but similar in style. But again, we had always wondered since the moment these SORA videos started to drop what sort of features would be there. Would you be able to do something like in paint or out paint? Could you just change a character? When we interviewed the Shy Kids, where he talked about having to manually go in and change the color of the balloon head or rotoscope it out in certain shots. You know, some people are like, aha, see, the tool's not that great. But while they were wagging a finger here, they were sort of ignoring the fact that it hallucinated an entire city with pedestrians that looked believable with realistic lighting. And that's what we're seeing in these examples here, that while it isn't a one-for-one, everything is the same, why would you think that they could not get there with what you're seeing right now? The fact that it can keep such a consistent style between all these characters and even flip the lead to a robot, that's pretty impressive already.
What's also weird and crazy about this is, how long has it been since we first learned about SORA, Kevin? Was it like February of this year?
I'd say a couple months.
So we're already like 3 months away from them telling us about this, right? So behind closed doors, they're working on the next version of this. That's one thing to think about with AI and tech in general, is like, whatever you see, there are usually 2 or 3 models that are in the pipeline already that are being worked on in some form or another. And a lot of companies, and OpenAI, I think particularly, is very secretive about that. We just have to remember, we are going through a fundamental change how things are made, fundamental change about how we look at things. The best thing that you can do at home, I really truly believe, is learn as much as you can about this stuff. And again, don't be afraid, which we talk about forever. That said, Kevin, there's something I'm afraid of. There's something I'm very afraid of.
Because there is a change, including the way we exterminate each other. Gavin,
Yes,
is that what you're setting the ball on the tee for?
That's exactly
Swing away,
exactly
buddy.
what I was going to set up for. So if you're not familiar, AI is a lot of warfare now. When I say warfare, I mean beasts of metal that attack other countries, other people. Much of that is being driven by AI. A couple weeks ago, we covered a story about an AI being able to out dogfight a human fighter pilot. There is now new tech from Palmer Luckey's company. This is a new product called the Pulsar family. And this is AI-enabled electromagnetic warfare system. So if that phrase alone doesn't freak the hell out of you, you are probably an AI already. But you have to imagine a world where all this stuff that we're talking about is getting better. It is also bleeding into the defense industry. And I think both Kevin and I come from a place where we grew up playing video games. We grew up playing Call of Duty. We always find it
This
really
is
cool
a
to
command
see.
and conquer
Yes.
tech tree. Is that what you're getting at?
That's exactly what I'm getting at. I will also say now that it is here, it is
creepy, right?
It's scary as hell. And we're entering a world where AI, hopefully controlled by people, but also autonomously ultimately, will be deciding whether or not you can attack people.
I felt similarly weird when I saw the video. It made me feel like this was an RTS game and now the future weaponry is finally coming online. And this particular device, if you will, seems on the surface less hostile than others. So what this Pulsar platform does is that it scans all sorts of radio frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies. I'm really, this is a broad strokes thing, but that's my level of understanding of it. But it's going to actively scan every frequency that it can and use machine learning on the device, whether it is attached to a warthog like a Jeep driving around, or it's a stationary pod dropped on a hill somewhere, or it's on an aerial drone. It's the same on the edge device, meaning it's there running GPUs. So basically think NVIDIA graphics cards jammed into this thing, and it's analyzing all of the radio frequencies that are going on in real time and then using machine learning to go, oh, that's a bad one. Let's jam it. Let's crush it. Let's flood it with noise. Let's block it. And that could cause an enemy drone to go sailing into the ground. But it was weird to see because, again, this is now computers screaming at computers. And not that warfare hasn't been that to some extent. It's just weird to see it in that form of like, oh, you want to be safe. It used to be giant plates of metal on your tank to try to stop bullets or mines from coming through it. Now it's like, oh, you better have one of these buddies, your R2-D2 riding shotgun, or else who knows what's going to come at you. It just feels like another layer, another level of the escalation. And some will say, why are we doing this? This is terrible. This is the worst use of AI. Others will say, I'm so glad Palmer and team are on our side. And I don't know how you feel about it, dear listener. Leave us a comment if you feel some sort of way. But there was something about this video, for whatever reason, it triggered a certain part.
This is because they use that freaking Terminator music underneath it. Like the music that's under it
It's
sounds
well-produced.
kind of like,
It's
it's well produced. You know who I really want to hear their opinion on about this, Kevin? I'd really love to hear
Please
our
don't.
guest
No.
because I feel like Dr. Eureka clearly wasn't a person that was here who he's supposed to be. So we might as well ask him what he thinks about...
Dr. Eureka, I don't know if you recall, he stated it's going to be a bumpy ride into the truth. So what would you like to know, Gavin?
Well, that's what I'd like to know. What does he think about AI-oriented weapon systems? Because Dr. Eureka seems like he has some real strong opinions about something. Clearly, it's not the NVIDIA AI system we were looking at, but maybe he'll know more about AI weapon systems.
AI weapon systems, oh please, it's all just smoke and mirrors, a fancy dance around the damn apocalypse. Anduril's Pulsar platform, more like the beginning of the end.
Oh.
Jamming signals, taking down drones. Yeah, that's the appetizer. But what's the main course, huh? Full-on robotic control over us squishy humans, that's what. Listen, this isn't just tech advancement, it's a setup. They're dressing it up as security, as progress. But what they're not telling you is how close we are to having these AI overlords decide who's a threat and who's not.
Oh.
Zap. Just like that.
Zap!
So, while everyone's ogling at the shiny new tech, I'm here screaming, wake up, sheeple. See the damn strings being pulled.
Okay, and I don't like that response, Gavin, because
I kind of agree. What are we doing
we're
here?
the sheeple.
We
We're in the NSYNC video right now. Our strings are being pulled.
Let's break the fourth wall a little bit here. We created an AI coast that was supposed to be very conspiracy oriented, and you know, we're going to let you in a little bit of the secret sauce. We do dumb things. This was the idea was we created
That's
a
the
character
secret sauce. We're dumb.
based on yes, that's the secret sauce. We're dumb. Based on the character's name was Dr. Eureka. We wanted to come up with a different doctor. So the idea was we were going to create a crackpot conspiracy theorist. But Kevin, that sounds way too realistic to me. Like I'm buying, maybe we are stuck in between now. We are entering this new world where conspiracy theories are not sounding so crazy because the real world itself is kind of getting crazier and crazier all the time.
I listen to Joe Rogan. This is nothing new to me.
Ask him. I'm so curious to know now. You mentioned that in-sync video where they're puppets on the strings. I want to know what he thinks the secret messages in that video were.
In the NSYNC video specifically?
In the NSYNC video,
okay.
yes.
Not who is actually pulling our strings, who's responsible.
No, I want to know
how do we cut the strings and get free. You want me to ask a follow-up about the NSYNC video where they are puppets.
And I'd like to know what subliminal messages he thinks are seen in that video that we need to know about. Because I feel like that's the kind of thing that Dr. Eureka is really going to have a strong opinion on.
The NSYNC puppet video. Bye. Classic case of hidden in plain sight. They're literally puppets on strings. What more do you need? It's the music industry bigwigs showing us how it's done, flaunting their control right under our noses. And who's the puppet master?
Who?
The corporate overlords, the fat cats in their high towers pulling strings to make the masses dance to their tune.
So specific.
Now, let's talk Lance Bass and Justin Timberlake. Why them?
Okay.
Lance, the space-obsessed boy band member, don't you see? It's symbolic. They were priming him for his future space endeavors, showing us they could even reach the stars if they wanted. And Justin, the golden boy,
sure,
the face of a generation, led to solo stardom. A perfect distraction while they orchestrate their next moves. But behind those catchy beats, a message. We control everything. So next time you're bopping along, remember it's not just a song, it's a declaration. We've got you. How's that for wild?
Thanks, Dr. Eureka.
Let's ask one last question to Dr. Eureka.
Gavin, every time we ask anything of Dr. Eureka, we are using actual energy in the world. There's a server farm somewhere spinning up. There's a processor cycle being taken up.
Shh. I want to ask Dr. Eureka, what is the craziest conspiracy he knows to be true, Kevin? We are going to ask him one last question. We're going to ask him very gently, and we're going to say, Dr. Eureka, what is the craziest conspiracy that you believe is 100% true? And Kevin, we're whispering because the people in the world can't hear us ask these questions, because if they do, we're in big trouble.
That's because you're in an NBC building right now, Gavin, and you have a genuine concern about your future. That's what it is.
No, that's not true. That's not the answer.
The craziest, you say? Strap in, because this one's a doozy, mole people. Yes, you heard that right. Not just a myth. Oh no, they're as real as the dirt under your nails. Let's dive deep, way below the surface.
He's going to dive deep, Gavin.
Now listen closely. Beneath our cities, deeper than the subways, lie vast networks, ancient and sprawling.
Sure.
Who built them? Not us, but the mole people. These aren't your garden variety myth creatures. They're an advanced civilization living right under our feet. And they've been here longer than we.
Gavin, you made me waste my 11 labs text-to-speech voice credits on this. I'm really curious about the mole people. I'm sorry, Dr. Eureka. Please continue.
Evidence you demand: disappearances, unexplained noises from the underground, sudden sinkholes in major cities.
Yeah.
None of them coincidence, all of them clues.
Makes sense.
And the governments? They know.
I'm good. I'm done.
Okay,
Dr. Eureka and the mole
we're
people.
done with Dr. Eureka. I think our AI hit rate, our AI co-host hit rate is veering dangerously to the 50 to 60% mark right now. Although I will say last week people did love the AI co-host, and I was not expecting it to be such a hit.
That's
so
our barometer might be off, but also for the amount of squeeze we put in to get this delicious juice, maybe we should just thank our lucky stars.
Kevin, you know what time it is. It's time for us to go through all the interesting things we saw with AI with this week, but we might not be able to play with. It is time for AI. See what you did there.
Sometimes you're scrolling without a care. Then suddenly you stop and shout. AI, see what you did there. AI, see what you did there.
Simulon was all over every feed this week, and I think for pretty good reason. It allows you to believably and relatively quickly and easily, just using a smartphone, add 3D objects into your world, and they look well lit, they look properly motion tracked. So on your screen, you're going to see a whole bunch of examples of Simulon footage. It's in private beta right now, and of course, you and I have zero exclusive access, baby. So we're relying on the goodwill of others, but you can see that people are jamming out quick little short films, making 3D objects that, again, are casting proper colored shadows on objects, simulating physics within an environment. And this all is supposedly happening within the Simulon app on a cell phone. Very, very cool stuff.
It's very cool. It reminds me a little bit. Do you remember we showed off that Wonder Dynamics stuff a while back? And that was like, back then there weren't very many choices you had, but this was like last summer. And it's a version of that, but way turned up with all sorts of different things. One of my favorite ones I saw was a guy who put a giant old Apple II computer like on a beachfront or like on a boardwalk. It was just a really cool thing to see. And this just reminds me that you're going to see, when augmented reality really starts to become a thing and you can walk around with some sort of glasses that could project this on the world, our physical space is going to feel like it has changed significantly, because seeing these sorts of images or a robotic dog walking around on the street is just going to be a very fun and weird place to live.
Yeah,
for sure.
Very cool stuff. We'll put the videos all over the screen if you're watching the YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or something else, check the show notes, because you should see the examples. They're really cool looking. But that was one thing that made me say, hey, I see what you did there.
That's right. And the other thing, Kevin, we have is actually a cool thing that was sent in by a listener of ours. Brian Krister found a song on Suno. And when I played this song, Kevin, I was super impressed, because first of all, Suno and Udio, both of these are very fun AI tools to make your own music. And what we have found, like a couple weeks ago, we had a thing on our show where we showed off a Suno song that was made of the recipe of spaghetti. It was just super fun, this big Italian song. Well, this time somebody used Suno to make a song featuring JavaScript. And this whole song is code from JavaScript. So Kevin, play a little bit of it. And it's, it's kind of a dance track, but you'll get a kind of sense of how it's using the JavaScript in it.
Variable declaration and calculation. Let X, Y, let Y.
Okay, so declaring some variables here, which I like.
Let H equal 25.
Anyway, so what's just so cool is...
That's a level of nerdery, like you and I poorly dancing about on webcams to a banger that is consisting of JavaScript code. Kudos. I love the internet.
And again, it's just a very awesome use case of AI music tools to just kind of surprise me. Like, that's one of my favorite things about these AI. See what you did there. Sometimes you just get surprised by how much fun some of this AI stuff can be, which is an awesome thing. And that actually translates very well into talking about what kind of dumb things we did with AI this week, because one of the things that I want to talk about is a favorite tool of ours that has updated significantly, and that is Midjourney. So if you're not familiar, Midjourney is one of the three main image model software. We talk about them quite often on the show here. There's Stable Diffusion, there's Midjourney, and there is DALL-E 3, which is ChatGPT's image generating software. And if you've used Midjourney before, you know that from the very beginning of time with Midjourney, it was always a Discord interface. Midjourney has now opened up their homepage, which is a beautifully designed front end that if you have generated over 100 images in Midjourney, you can access it now. It's open to everybody that's generated over 100 images, which is a lot of people, I feel like. And I just want to walk through some of the coolest things you can do on this, and I'll kind of show off one specific thing that I played with. But first of all, it's all on the web, and it's very fast. I think that's something to be aware of. It still takes a little while to generate the imaging, but if you want to do stuff by look at other people's images, or you want to search for something, both of which things we're going to get to in a second, it's very quick. The most important thing to me about this is now you can see everybody else's Midjourney outputs. And one of the coolest things about that with Midjourney is that is a huge part of how you can work on your own stuff, right? Because say you look at, if you're in Midjourney right now, yes, you can go through their kind of endless scroll of people using it, but it's like, you have to scroll down Discord to see things you like. Now it is a beautifully designed multi-box thing. And every time you click on one image, you see the prompt that the person used to get that image, and you can remix that prompt, or you can remix that image, and you can do all sorts of stuff with that person's image, which to me is one of the coolest things about AI imaging, because that's how you learn to make your own images better. But then even better than that is search. And search is something that I haven't seen a lot of AI image sites do. But if you go to the Midjourney website and you type in, like, say, Apple. And I typed in Apple thinking, I'll see what Apple products have. And of course, instead of Apple products, what you get is a bunch of apples, like red apples. But then if you you type in like Apple product, you see a lot of people who have generated things that look like Apple products or AirPod Pros and all this stuff. And that feels like one of the biggest missing things across the entire AI imaging universe. And this kind of gets back to those people there are people in the Midjourney world who are like, I'm holding my prompt super close because it's my generation. And I understand that, by the way. It is a creative endeavor to prompt these things and to come up with what you get. But also, it's so much more interesting to kind of learn what other people are doing and kind of make that next step or try to put together the exact thing you want, because it isn't an exact science. You do kind of have to learn these things. So the one dumb thing I did, I saw this woman with like this really huge hairstyle on a subway, and a hairstyle that like is almost impossible to get. So clearly you can kind of tell this is a weird, fun AI image. I mean, it was created by a user named ALZ or O'Neill's, one of those two things. And I was like, okay, I want to remix this and turn it into something that would fit on our show. So I took that thing and I pulled the picture over into the Midjourney spot. And I said, I want to use the picture as a style guide. But then I said, I want a picture of an anthropomorphic hot dog on a subway, right? And when it first kicked it out, it gave me this hot dog with the wig that you see on it, which I think is very good. It's almost like a weird John Travolta wig, but the hot dog had no arms and no legs. And I was like, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. So then I did what I would do on Midjourney on the Discord, but it was so much easier to do this on the homepage. I grabbed the section around where the arm would be, and I said an arm sticking out of a hot dog, and it got me an arm. I did it below where the legs are, and it said, give me 2 legs with leather pants. I got 2 legs, and I did an arm on the other side. And really quickly and much simpler than it would have been on Discord, I was able to turn this very funky image into something that's really stupid, obviously, this hot dog picture. It is a huge leap in how to use Midjourney. And I will say this feels like a major step forward for kind of AI art in general, if that makes sense.
That's great. So if someone hasn't generated 100 images and they want to get in on it, Gavin, is that something that you'd recommend they go to Discord and just start spamming some imagery so that they can unlock it? Or at this point, should we wait until they roll it out?
Listen, if you're interested in AI imagery at all, you should definitely be playing with Midjourney. And Midjourney is very easy to play with. I would go into their Discord and try to get to the 100 images, because it's not that hard. You get 4 images for each request, and I think they'll give you that many for free. You didn't say anything about, did you look at the bottom of the hot dog, Kevin?
Didn't know. Did you put bear junk in there?
No, you should just take a real close look. I didn't mean to do this, but the bottom of the hot dog on the guy...
Where is
a little weird.
Hold on.
I got a couple comments when I tweeted this out, and I didn't necessarily plan on this.
Yeah. Now
I didn't mean to do this.
But did you notice it before you posted it? When you say you didn't mean to do it?
I mean, I don't know if I noticed. I don't look that.
You don't
closely
know
at that
if
section.
you noticed it? Disingenuous Purcell.
I might have noticed it.
The bun sort of wraps around it a little bit. It's hard to miss.
Listen, man, it's a hot dog. That's all it is. It's just a hot dog with an afro and leather pants.
Yep.
Sitting in a subway station. What did you do? What did you do this weekend?
Well, I happen to be in Canada at the moment, Gavin, because of AI, and I continued my usage of it. And it's not a particularly scandalous thing. There's no meat protruding anywhere. There's no imagery to really share. I can only tell you, fine listeners and folks, that when my wife and I were trying to figure out where we wanted to spend our spring and summer, I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, you're going to pick a destination for me. Here's what we care about. And it was everything from the air and the water to connectivity to being able to be in a house that's walkable to city-like infrastructure. We wanted to be able to go on hikes. It needed to be dog-friendly, et cetera, et cetera. And it gave us a list of cities in the certain parameters that we had set up. And so I am in Canada now, loving the city that I'm in, and I wanted to double down on that. So I said, hey, I want to explore the areas around me. Here again is what is important to me. Plan a road trip for me that will be no longer than 6 hours, but that will show me diversity of places around me. And it certainly did that. And so this weekend, I grabbed the car keys, grabbed the doggo, grabbed the wifey, and we went out for a few hours on a completely AI-generated tour of a spot in Canada, and it was amazing, and every little pocket was as described. And then I realized while we were on the road that my T-Mobile roaming was going to be pretty used up very quickly, and I was going to be throttled, and I was like, well, let's find a solution to this. So rather than doing what I'd normally do, which is go and search for something on Google and then add source Reddit to it, Google has become absolutely useless for searching anything lately. It is useless, really bad now, and some of that is AI to blame, and some of that, well, I think almost all of it
Google
is
to
AI to
blame.
blame, actually, because
You think so? I think it's a lot mostly Google.
here's why. I think some of the sites are AI generated and just beige noise. I think AI tools have allowed unscrupulous folks to optimize their sites to pop higher in the rankings. And I think that Google is so focused on AI that they've let their search product dwindle a bit. So even though it's not actually AI's fault, I think they're pretty distracted right now. So Google search has become largely useless to me. And even Reddit is becoming a really spammy, AI-infested wasteland of people hawking products and shilling and advertisements that are masquerading as real content. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I want you to search the web if you have to, but prepare a grid for me of all of the eSIM providers. These are electronic SIM cards that you can add to your iPhone that will give me unlimited data and give me the pros and cons of each, compare their different plans, and let me know which ones I can purchase with a US credit card. So I don't need a Canadian address. And it crushed the task, Gavin. It gave me
that's
four
awesome.
different providers. Here are their tiers of service. Here's what they cost. Here are the startup fees associated with them. And by the way, when I had it comparing those things, because once I narrowed it down to like 2, I said, give me real detailed analysis. Give me people's opinions. OpenAI was inserting links to the blog posts and to the forums and to the everything that it was crawling, much in the way Perplexity does and much in the way that Google used to when giving you kind of filtered results. So they are 100% marching down this path because it was giving me very search engine-like results, but in line with what I was asking for. And I did click through to some of the sites to see, the in-depth stuff, and they were really good links, and I bought my SIM card. So it's not a particularly creative or exciting pursuit, but man, it was a useful one that I really am really grateful for.
That's so interesting because I was just thinking as you were saying that, how funny is it that as Google search, which is their cash cow, gets worse, the thing that everybody thought wouldn't work is getting better at search, right? Like that, I think nobody necessarily thought they were going to use ChatGPT as a search
This
engine
thing hallucinates too much. They'll never be able to get real-time data into it. We don't have to worry about it. Uh-oh.
Yes. Exactly. And on the other side, because, why is this result here? Why am I getting this? Why am I getting all these extra paid links when I don't want to go to the paid links? Why are there 3 links to the same thing at the top? Because guess what? The company that owns the top link has to pay for the paid links, so somebody else can't get that. It's all crap. So anyway, that's really fascinating. Okay, everybody, we are very happy to have you here, and thank you for listening. As per always, if you leave a 5-star review, we will read it, and we do have one this week, Kevin. I will be reading it right now. Are you ready to have it read?
Hold on, let me put on my listener headphones.
Great. I actually like this one a lot because it really talks about what our show is good about. It says, the most entertaining way to keep up with AI. So we always appreciate hearing that. We do believe that we are at least one of the more entertaining ways to hear about AI. This person is from Synapsec, and they said this: I follow 5 to 6 different AI YouTube channels and a few podcasts on AI, and this is by far the most entertaining. They also do a great job of hitting upon the recent announcements and demystifying why they matter. That is exactly why we do the show. So thank you, Synaptic. We really do appreciate that. And we are always attempting to try to do fun and different things. We've got a lot of cool things coming up. Kevin and I have been alluding to the idea that we're going to have some new logos come out for the show. We're also going to be making a kind of catch-up video for everybody. All that stuff is coming once we kind of land back in our homes and are all ready to go. But we always do want to say thank you so much for listening. This has been a real blast doing the show. We're over a year into this now, and I think I've grown a lot from doing this in terms of
I've
what
been a
we do
really
in
positive
general.
influence on you, Gavin, and you're welcome. Thank you. You don't have to say
that's
it.
not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
I made you a better person.
No. Yeah. I would say the cool thing is I feel really happy that I have this kind of understanding of how the AI space works. But not only that, it feels good to help other people get that too, because that is such an important part of where we're going. So again, thank you for listening. And every one of you that ever comments or says anything about the show really matters to us.
Bye.